Hello there everyone, welcome back to the Gypsy Rose Prison Confessions review with me, Hatman, Advocate of the Devil, or plain simple Hatz if you prefer. The end is now in sight for this series, half a dozen episodes to review the backstory of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the woman with the childish voice who's been presented to the world as a lifelong victim who should be pitied and entitled to endless waves of sympathy. Why? Because she killed her mother. Apparently matricide is a blank check for life on Easy Street. Do a few years in prison as a token sentence for ending a life, have a few documentaries made, then when you get released have a camera crew follow you everywhere and most of your needs taken care of from an army of do-gooder simpletons. For anyone new to this channel and this particular series, please check out earlier videos. There's a playlist already set up on the homepage. And to reiterate, I'm aware there have been many revelations that have been made since her release from prison, but I'm deliberately avoiding reading or watching those, at least for now, so that I can establish a baseline. That baseline basically being the Gypsy Rose that the studios, producers, and victim-promoting elements of society want you to see. People who want the world to hear their story, their truth, but are apparently allergic to the truth. The whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Just their selective truth matters, and that's the story that should be told. But I digress, and things like FOIA requests and post-release interviews and so on will be crossing this screen in upcoming installments. For now, we're moving on to episode 5 of the Prison Confessions, the interviews, reconstructions, and general public image whitewashing that began before her release on parole. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button, and
let's get down to business.
I know Gypsy's the one because I feel it.
He said, Gypsy Blanchard, I love you more than anything I've ever loved.
Dee Dee, she took her daughter's entire existence from her.
Your mom's dead, okay? Now, what I want to ask you is...
No, you could never take my soul.
Your soul is mine.
last episode, the deed had been done and Gypsy had fled with Nick Godejohn, but hadn't yet been caught. So it looks like this one will be dealing with the manhunt and arrest, and we have the arrival of Ryan, Prince of the Gypsy Simps, enters the story. For a little while, anyway, until he serves his purpose, which doesn't take long, but that, as far as I know, is more of a life after lockup tale.
When I get paroled in 2023, it was always the plan that I was going to go and live with my dad and stepmom, Christy. Then I fell in love. Didn't expect that.
I doubt anyone expected that, especially not her, mostly because I don't think she knows what that emotion is. I mean, hell, people were making plans to support her upon her release, and she pretty much threw all that away because she fell in love with basically a pen pal who pretty much fluffed her narcissistic ego and gave her an undeserved sense of self-importance.
Ryan and I have been engaged for about 6 months. I think the reason I kept my engagement a secret for so long is because I wanted to keep this little bit of happiness private, even from my family. Because so often in my life, nothing has been private, where it's just me and this other person that I'm with sharing in an intimate moment together.
You want to keep it private to preserve some intimate moments and thoughts without them having to be put out there in the public domain, or was it because you thought that it would screw up your parole chances? After all, it seems like the entirety of the build-up to the parole hearing was based on the assumption that she'd be living with her father and stepmother, that she wasn't in any relationship, and so presumably not a risk to anyone, or equally, I suppose, at risk from someone. And while her claim for wanting some semblance of privacy kind of makes sense at a surface level, once you scratch that, the reality is that she lied again. A lie that she can publicly claim was for privacy, but in reality was because it benefited her. A lie to conceal that this relationship potentially could have harmed her chances of parole. So what we've got is that she led her family on, allowing them to believe that she would reside with them, making preparations for her, and supporting her parole bid with assurances to the authorities that they would cooperate, except Gypsy has no intention of going ahead with that. She was basically using them to foster her desire for freedom, after which she'd set up home with a guy who she assumed would be devoted to her.
My name is Ryan Anderson, and Gypsy Rose Blanchard is my fiance. I first learned about Gypsy watching her story. Her story, just hit me. And I thought, gosh, she's cute. You know, like one of those things where I was like, Gypsy's very cute.
Well, hello, Ryan. So nice to finally see your entry into Gypsy law. Congratulations, your immortality as a massive simp has now been assured. But let's be fair, at least to start out, okay? He looks like a very homely gentleman, probably doesn't have many, if any, bodies to his name. Unless we're talking literal bodies, in which case that's also a possibility. Anyway, he watched her story, which I think is pretty clear has been heavily sanitized. What with her being presented exclusively as a victim of her Munchausen suffering mother, something which was never diagnosed in life and only ascribed after the fact without any input from Dee Dee. It's almost reminiscent to me of these idiotic, woke, PC-obsessed historians who will look at a 2,000-year-old skeleton of a Roman centurion and just declare randomly that, yes, this soldier was probably non-binary or gender fluid. I'm like, yeah, it's a skeleton. Project harder. And she's cute, apparently. I mean, I can kind of understand that. I mean, ugly things can sometimes be cute, right?
So lovely as you did tonight. I've never seen you shine so bright. Lady in red is dancing with me, cheek to cheek. There's nobody here.
Look at you! She's coming with us!
No, she's not.
Oh, yes, she
Fuck
is.
no.
Oh, yes.
Tiger King was very popular at the time. And so my friend said, oh, I really want to write Tiger King. And I said, okay, well, I'll make a deal with you. I said, you write Tiger King, I'll write Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And that's what happened.
So basically, yeah, a couple of nerds who probably never touched another person's bare body decide their best hope is to write to some prisoners.
The thing that stuck out the most about Ryan's letter is not only how genuine it came across, but also how funny he is. His sense of humor was great, and I just vibed with that very well.
She's talked to a lot of people, you know, but she chose a Louisiana boy for a reason, I guess. But I made her laugh.
I'm sure she talked to a lot of people, and out of all of them, you're top of her pile. Well, I mean, after the guy she was involved with for a couple of years, what was his name? Ken or something? Anyway, him, and then you, right up to the point that she had alternatives. Not that I want to shit on poor Ryan too much. I mean, I kind of feel a little sorry for him that he probably thought he could fix her and end his perpetual state of loneliness, only to get played by a proven con artist. There are some silver linings for poor Ryan that he will come to realize in due course, namely that there'll be women who'll want to fix him after Gypsy's done breaking him.
Ryan and I, our relationship is just, it's goofy. It's a little bit of everything. I think he compliments me really well. He has more of a softer side. He calms, almost like a storm that's inside my soul.
Man, lots of relationships have goofiness in them. It's part of the fun and the charm. It's also vaguely concerning that there's a storm inside of her that needs to be calmed. It almost implies that she has a predisposition to violence, or at the very least an aggressive streak that she can deploy in various ways, such as grooming a mentally deficient psychopath to kill her mother.
When I heard Gypsy's story, I felt sad for her. I felt like I couldn't judge her for that. I understood why she did it. You know, Gypsy felt like this was the only way out.
And therein lies the objective for Project Gypsy, the mission to whitewash her image and present her as the victim. A poor, tormented young woman pushed into eliminating her own mother to end her torment and suffering. And if the public generally will accept that, mission accomplished. I mean, hell, in all honesty, even I felt sympathetic for her back in the beginning when I first heard about the story and saw the mini-series, but then I was just kind of watching the story unfold and not really thinking critically about it. Now I am, and finding it far more interesting than the network-presented, whitewashed fairy tale.
Get a phone call from viewers. There's crime scene tape up on this house on the north side of town. We call our only reporter on staff and say, we need you to check it out. He says, you guys have got to get on Facebook. And he starts sending us links. And so all the bells and whistles go off. This is the duo that Habitat for Humanity helped. This is the duo that Make-A-Wish helped. Immediately, everybody starts freaking out because they were so beloved.
Of course the media is going to get involved at the first opportunity. They're there for most significant crime scenes, but in the age of social media, it makes it so much easier, especially when it involves someone who, as she just said, is beloved. People love to witness wreckage. Even when they say it horrifies them, humans possess a fascination with the macabre. And at this point in time, nobody really knows what's been going on, so as far as they're aware, it's just a poor, sickly little girl and her caring, devoted mother. Who really wants to admit they've been taken for a ride for years? At least until they're part of a group, then they can all be a victim and seem less of a fool.
The Greene County Sheriff's Department, after being alerted to these posts, went to the Blanchard home, and they found Dee Dee was murdered in her bedroom. Dee Dee was on her bed with multiple stab wounds to her back.
I expect there are far more graphic images in the subsequent FOIA releases, along with details that are omitted here. I'm sure someone on the production team might argue the need to protect viewer sensitivities, but if that was the stance, that also mitigates what happened and what Gypsy has instigated. Even though she didn't wield the knife on that night, there's simply no escaping that she planned the entire event. She knew what was taking place, and she had so many opportunities to avoid it or stop it from happening, and she didn't.
Dee Dee's car's in the driveway. Then they found Gypsy's wheelchair and all her medication. So the word was, okay, Dee Dee's found dead, someone took off with Gypsy. But her wheelchair, did they carry her?
It was thought that she may very well be in danger, that she didn't leave of her own accord.
Now, to me, it sounds like a perfectly executed strategy, but I also consider myself a tad smarter than Gypsy. So, was it accidental that the working theory was that her mother had been murdered and she'd been kidnapped? Or was that her actual plan? Get Nicholas Goodjohn to kill her mother, help her get away, give her somewhere to stay for a little while, and then at the opportune time, she can sell him out as her kidnapper and get away with planning a murder. I mean, it's certainly possible, though if that is the case, I guess her plan was sunk by him being a homeboy living in his parents' attic. It's kind of hard to claim you've been abducted when there's a family of witnesses just below you.
My initial thought was, oh my God, somebody took Gypsy. She can't walk. She needs this medication. Did they bring her somewhere and just dump her in the woods for her to die? That was sheer panic.
And what is someone going to think? In the absence of any information, and especially when something is so out of the blue, people are going to imagine all manner of scenarios, with many of them bleak. Not to mention, most people, including her own family, simply didn't know what Gypsy was physically capable of. Yes, they're going to envision this fragile girl being carried off and her body dumped somewhere. Now, I wonder if Dee Dee's family feature in this episode, because they were the ones who saw Gypsy being physically active and only reverting to being crippled when her mother was around. I'd love to see their take on this scenario.
I did see a news report that people thought that I was missing. My first reaction was fear that people were going to come looking for me. And not that I was afraid to be arrested, but fear that I was going to be brought back to that same way of life, but just by another person.
Yeah, nice attempt at mitigation. Of course, people will be looking for you, dumbass. They're reporting your mother's been murdered and you're missing. Yes! They're going to be looking for you, and that's on the news. While you hang out in your boyfriend's attic, and I guess hope that his parents don't watch the news and wonder, what the fuck? But you also knew that the life which you'd been living wasn't normal. And since your mother was dead, you know, the person you have blamed almost unequivocally for that life, you wouldn't be going back to it no matter what. Of course you're afraid of being caught. You'd conspired to murder your mother, and people were actively looking for you.
A friend of Gypsy's had told police that Gypsy was speaking with this young man, Nicholas Godejohn from Wisconsin. Law enforcement were able to get a warrant and sent it to Facebook, And Facebook was able to provide them and with an IP address, which went to Nicholas at his residence in Big Bend, Wisconsin.
See, this is where it boils down to whether she's incredibly stupid or smart enough to plot her mother's murder and then set up the guy who actually did the deed so he takes all the blame. I'm leaning towards the latter, and I'm reminded of a quote from one of the best movies of all time.
He's intelligent, but not experienced. This pattern indicates two-dimensional thinking.
Clearly, she was smart enough to come up with the plan and lay the evidence trail at her boyfriend's feet, but not experienced enough to anticipate all the variables. After all, this was real life, not a movie script.
The next day after my mother's body was found, we spent the night watching a movie at his mother's house, and we went to sleep. And then the next morning, I hear racket going on downstairs and dogs barking. The next thing I hear is, Nicholas Godejohn, come out with your hands above your head, you are under arrest. I look out the window and see the house is surrounded by these armored vehicles. I panic. I'm like, oh like, what are we gonna do?
You panicked because you hadn't expected to be found so soon. In your desire to point the finger at Nick and away from yourself, you hadn't considered that the police, especially in a potential murder-kidnap case, will execute warrants as a priority. There's a reason they reference the first 48 hours being so critical, and no officer or judge is going to be an obstacle to an investigation. And you hadn't quite figured out how you were going to get out of there, where you'd go, or likely even consider that his parents might see the news and your face plastered all over it. Those minor details that might not make it into a garden variety police procedural show that was likely your sole experience, but would be pretty obvious to most normal, well-adjusted people.
I have so many men that try to date me or write to me or try to hit on me, but nothing and no one is gonna ever compare to the relationship that I have with Ryan.
It's really so stupid. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think I can express it any better. I mean, really? Ryan's the special one? Yeah, okay.
Me and Gypsy had been corresponding for a year and 2 months before I even met her. Apparently, she had another boyfriend and didn't tell me. And that's where her feelings lied, with him. But yet, she couldn't stop calling me. She knew something was there between us.
Oh, you poor, dumb, stupid man. You're so desperate for a peace. You want to hook up with a woman who conspired to murder her mother, groomed a mentally disabled man to do it for her, was already in a relationship when you were falling for her, and neglected to mention that at all.
Well, you know, you can't control how feelings surface. And then eventually, the guy that I was dating, I broke up with him to focus on Ryan. Around that time, my institution allowed us to talk on our tablets, kind of like cell phones. And it's been so great because I'm able to call him anytime I want to.
My understanding is that the boyfriend at the time, Ken, I think it was, dumped her ass. I'm sure someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's who it was, and that's what happened. He dumped her. Here you are, Gypsy, lying to the interviewer over something so trivial about who dumped who. But Jesus Christ, you murder your mom, send a disabled guy to jail for life without the possibility of parole, and all you get is a few years in relative comfort, the option of parole, and in between that, you get a tablet, internet access, and you can video chat with your boyfriend.
When I first told my mother that I was talking with Gypsy Rose, at first she was a little like, why? You know, so my mom was hesitant at first because of what she was in jail for. What's the need to talk to her? Like, why not? And it grew from there.
Well, Ryan, I'm going to go on a limb and say that your mom probably had her reasons, including that she presumably is not stupid and potentially might be in fear of her life from someone who orchestrated the assassination of her own mother. But then your mom isn't you and presumably not as desperate for bits of, rumpy-pumpy.
We had this connection that it seemed so seamless, so easy. This is something I never thought that I would have after everything that has happened.
I've said it before, I've been trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible, but I have seen snippets of Life After Lockup before I even started covering this, and the dynamic with her and Ryan is very weird, almost like throwing together two mismatched personalities in cheap reality TV that people only watch out of morbid curiosity and the expectation of a car crash, which pretty much does describe exactly what happened. And there we have it, the murder weapon, handpicked by Gypsy herself, sharp, serrated, savagely efficient, and she still likes to claim that she didn't really know what she was getting into. Bollocks.
When our department arrived at the Godejohn residence, it was a full SWAT team response. There were canines there, and it was a mini standoff, I would say.
Nick tells me to get in the closet, and we lock ourselves in the closet for about 15-20 minutes, deciding what is a story that we're going to come up with to tell them. Nick tells me the story that I tell the police is, my mother kicked me out of the house, and he came to pick me up to live with him in Wisconsin.
I can imagine that conversation with you asking what to tell them and him giving you the most simplistic answer, while in your own mind you've already got the outline of a story ready to go, and one that involves putting all the blame on him.
It was kind of like watching a movie. It's like it wasn't happening to me. It was happening to somebody else. It was just a state of emotional shock.
Yeah, you can call it an emotional shock if you like, and I'm sure there was an element of that, but the cause, I think, was more down to ignorance of real life, as I mentioned earlier. The allusion to it being like a movie, whereas this was reality, and happy endings rarely take place when you're involved in someone's death.
They kept us completely separate cars, separate interrogation rooms. It was terrifying for me.
Hi, Gypsy. Let you guys talk. I'm Detective Hancock. I'm with Green County Sheriff's Office. How are you today? Good. Well, Gypsy, we are here investigating something, so I do need to talk with you about some things, okay?
I'm thankful because I have no idea why I'm here.
Okay.
Nobody will tell me anything.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's kind of why we're here, to kind of help you out with that, okay?
Of course they're going to keep you separated. They don't want you sat next to each other rehearsing stories, and also avoid the slight chance that one of you might try to kill off the other one. What did you think? That they would let you sit together, hold hands, and sing Disney songs on your way to the police station? Now, maybe at the time it seemed like a good idea to play innocent, but yeah, if you've been arrested, you can usually assume that the cops know more than you think they do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
I'm thinking that they're going to take me at my word. I'm thinking that these people are not going to figure everything out.
Again, we come back to the earlier point that you might be intelligent, but you're not experienced, whereas they have a lot of experience in dealing with all manner of people, intelligent and dumb.
You need to be honest with me, and if you're involved in anything that I'm about ready to tell you, then you need to tell me, okay? Your mom's dead, okay? Now, what I want to ask you is, your mom's passed away, okay? And she's deceased, all right? Now, what I want to ask you, did you have involvement in this? Okay.
No.
Hang on, listen to me for just a second, okay?
Before, I could lie and think nothing of it. I could tell a million lies and really not feel any guilt about it.
Now, that is probably one of the most honest statements I've ever heard from her. It's a pity the camera's in the corner. I'd have loved to see a front-on body camera reaction to see how good her acting really is.
I don't know what happened with my mom.
Okay, you just listen to me, okay, sweetheart? You know what happened to your mom, okay?
Look, Nick and my mom didn't get along very good.
Okay.
I was completely in the dark about what Nick was saying. I kept thinking that he was going to stick with the story that he created, and that our stories would line up and we would be released.
Really? Because you pretty much immediately threw him under the bus within moments and pointed the finger at him by suggesting a motive for him to kill your mother. Where was that in the pre-planned story of how she threw you out and he picked you up to take you home with him?
So for the third visit, I bought an engagement ring. I snuck it in, put it on my chain.
We came in and sat down, and he took me by the hands and just told me that he loved me so much.
She had her makeup done, and she looked so cute. And I was sitting across from her and I looked at her. I just knew. You know, it's just one of those things you know. And we had something special. We had that chemistry, and I asked her to marry me.
It's not me jumping around, this is just what the producers decided to do. Hey, let's put custody interview here and then immediately jump back to recalling the engagement. I just can't help it. I do feel a bit sorry for this big idiot. I think he genuinely did develop feelings for her, and they were sincere, only they happened to be for someone who wanted a cock who would be under her control. Probably in the same way that she viewed how her mother controlled her, so now she wants to be in that position.
Ryan knows everything about me. The joys, the pains, the struggles, the not so good stuff.
The not so good stuff. Yes, I would qualify conspiring to murder your mother as not so good, but did he really know everything about you? I mean, he didn't know about Ken until way down the line. He didn't know at this point anyway how manipulative, controlling you could be. Hell, maybe even you didn't understand what you would be capable of once you got back into the real world.
Give me for just a second. Okay? You're in a situation where you can help yourself right now. What happened with your mom that night?
I've watched the video before, and all I could do is say, like, oh, my heart feels for her, because, like, I really just was so scared. And I was scared of the consequences. But I think that I was more scared of not having anyone to lean on.
I think what you mean is that you were beginning to realize that you'd been caught, you knew before anything happened what you were doing was wrong, and now you were being faced with the consequences of what you'd done. You had no one to protect you from it, and the best you could hope was to try and pass as much of the blame onto someone else as you could, and that someone else was Nick Goodajohn.
I guess she's your girlfriend, Gypsy's your
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
And you love her?
Oh, do I ever?
Can you tell me this first? Did Gypsy know that you were going to kill her mother?
Honestly, she asked me to.
Okay. So Gypsy knew you were going to do it because Gypsy asked you to.
Yes.
Why did she ask you to do that?
Because she felt it was her only way to be with me.
Okay.
Very unusual for someone that commits a serious crime like this to basically open up and tell you everything. But it didn't take long at all.
Yeah, and that wasn't a clue that you were dealing with someone who was several cans short of a six-pack? That this guy was clearly mentally incompetent and is openly admitting to things that make him look bad, but also implicating his girlfriend as a conspirator?
Okay, I'll admit it. I did actually stab her mom. I will admit it.
I know. Okay.
The only reason I did it is because I did it for me and her. That's the real reason I did it. I would have never did it if it was not for me and her.
Okay.
I feel like he wanted to get me out of that situation, but then a bigger part of me thinks that I could have been anyone, because murder was something that he always wanted to do as a fantasy.
And this is why you are such a duplicitous bitch. In one breath, you're saying he thought he was doing the right thing and trying to get you out of that situation, and the next you're saying he would have done it anyway with anyone because it was his fantasy to commit murder. There's a big difference with someone making throwaway comments or even having passing fantasies, and then seeing them for yourself as you did, and feeding into them, encouraging them, reassuring him about them, that it was okay and it would be fine, and then on top of that providing him with the means to act them out. And you know what, maybe it would have happened with someone else if they had been just as devious and manipulative as you. Otherwise he'd have probably existed forever in a quiet corner of the world and no one would even know he was there.
At that point, they cornered me. There was nowhere to run, there was no one to lie to, there was no more facades.
I lied to you from the beginning. I'll tell you the truth all now. He hated my mom, but because my mom didn't want us to be together.
I thought that I would be in trouble, but I didn't think that it would be as much as Nick. Never dreaming that, for my part, I could potentially spend the rest of my life in prison.
And there's the crux of it. The realization and the admission. She figured she might get into trouble, but never imagined it could be as bad as Nick. And while he's being interviewed separately, admitting what he did, that he did it for her, There she is, pointing the finger at him, doing it because he hated her mom and completely leaving out her own involvement.
I do believe I am the Prince Charming that Gypsy's been waiting for her whole life. I really do believe that. When Gypsy gets out, I plan on supporting her and doing what a husband's supposed to do to his wife. I'm a 6th grade social studies teacher. So I'm a teacher, I do okay. I live in Louisiana and she's in Missouri. And I help raise my nephew with my mother. But we are looking for a place right now for just me and her.
Yeah, if Timu did Disney, you might be Prince Charming. Oh, why am I being so mean to him? I mean, look, I think his heart was in the right place, Lonely guy found a girl, albeit in prison, that he thought was pretty and that he could fix her, and into the bargain, she'd fill a void in his own life. I mean, he's probably a nice enough guy, but incredibly naive and the perfect patsy for someone like Gypsy to control, manipulate, and indulge her whims.
Part of me thinks that sometimes Gypsy might need saving, but at the same time, I need saving too. She saved me as much as I saved her.
As the song goes, there it is. He wanted to save her and thought she would save him. Whatever the specific reasoning, I mean, we can probably all make some wild yet accurate guesses. It boils down to a vision of being the heroic yet broken savior who will fix her while she simultaneously fixes him. Goddamn, Hollywood has a lot to answer for.
Going into court, I was ashamed, I was sad, I felt guilty. It was a moment where I felt very low. I kept my head down, and what I was thinking was just keep breathing. Just keep focusing on your next step.
When we saw Gypsy walk across the courtroom, that made it pretty clear that this was going to be far more complicated than we had initially believed.
I'll say, because for her entire lifetime, she's been presented to the world in increasingly public manner as ultra-disabled and completely helpless. And not only do you have the allegations of conspiracy to commit murder to deal with, you've also got to battle with the fact that a 23-year-old woman was complicit in lies about her own physical abilities and intellect. Fortunately, that's where you can point the finger firmly at the guy who actually did the deed and make him appear more responsible for the overall conspiracy than he was. And you still have the ace in the hole of claiming abuse as a mitigating factor.
I kind of led them to think that I am just a victim in this just as much as my mother was.
She was terrified. Gypsy was terrified that we were going to turn our back on her. And she was, I didn't do it, I didn't know Nick, was going to do this. And still then we didn't know anything.
I like how it's all coming together now. The conclusions I came to in earlier episodes are now being confirmed as we get to the back end of the story, albeit without all the extra detail of the FOIA releases, but that's something I'll come to in future. She was trying to pass herself off as a victim, just like her mother, and to try and maintain her support network, she was fully prepared to lie and play the victim role to the hilt to keep everyone on side. Something that was always pretty obvious, but it's always nice to have it confirmed.
First time I heard about Ryan, Christy told me about him. I said, yeah, no, she's got a guy now, and, she likes him. They've been talking. It's like her third boyfriend, maybe. Third boyfriend. So it's like, oh, it's just another one of her boyfriends.
Another one of her boyfriends? Wait, how many has she had while she's been in prison? I mean, we know 2 for definite, right? I mean, maybe it is only 2, and Dad there is just making it seem like she's a whore. She is.
I was visiting with Gypsy. I remember a guard walked by and was like, y'all cannot get married in secret and not tell your family and friends. Like, you can't do that to your dad, Gypsy. And so that's when we were like, okay, we tell them.
Premarital advice from a prison guard. No wonder they had such a long and happy life together.
About 3 months ago, she had called me and she said, Mom, I need to tell you something. Ryan and I want to get married. And I just was silent for a half a minute, I'll say. Just like thinking, oh God, don't get married.
stepmom like anyone else with common sense, thinking it would be a bad idea. The funny thing is, had this show gone out earlier, I've no doubt that huge swaths of do-gooders will be firmly cheering it on with zero thought, given how batshit crazy it sounds. Literally just in this episode, we've already determined that she was looking for yet another Prince Charming and someone to carry her ass, while the husband-to-be was looking to be heroic and save her while she saves him too. This is a Lifetime rom-com tragedy, but filmed on a PBS shoestring budget.
Christy keeps telling me, why don't you live with him first and then see where things go? And I don't think that they understand that when someone is on parole, they have to parole to a family member.
Yeah, there is some logic behind the decision to get married for that reason alone, because she wouldn't have been able to live with him while on parole. She'd have to remain in the family home with dad and stepmom, and I guess it would be really awkward to spend years living there, potentially with her fiance/boyfriend. So, husband, family member can live with him and have some of that independence she craved so much. It doesn't mean it wasn't a dumb idea in literally every other sense, but the rules kind of forced it into being a sensible idea too.
We found a prescription pad that was stolen from the hospital. That meant that now not only is she using medical means to abuse Gypsy, but now she can do it on her own. She doesn't even need a doctor. What Dee Dee did to Gypsy was one of the most egregious forms of parental abuse you can imagine. She took her daughter's entire existence from her.
The bottom line will always be that motivations can never be established now. Dee Dee is dead, and the only source of information is the woman who conspired to murder her. Munchausen's can only be inferred and provides a nice little label to explain away the behaviors in a convenient manner that absolves Gypsy of all complicity, or at least most of it, in the events that took place. I mean, I'm open to the notion that there was some abuse at some point for a time. Was Dee Dee just trying to play nurse for legitimate conditions and simply demonstrated gross incompetence in it? Was it malicious? Was it all just a scam and then it became habitual behavior because she didn't want to be exposed for the scam? Because then you're talking about fraud and convictions, and she had to maintain the lifestyle and the perception of caring for a profoundly disabled child to avoid going to jail, basically. Did that cross into actual abuse, or was it just simply part of the fraud? The reality is her thought processes will never be known. But for years, Gypsy was very much aware of what was happening, and if she wanted to remove herself from that situation, she had ample opportunities to do so. But it's far easier to pin the blame on an abusive mother committing mass fraud who can't be questioned or tell her side of the story. It's nice and neat, no one around to object to it, and everyone can put it behind them and move on with their lives and careers without more invasive questions being asked.
When I think about everything that happened to Gypsy, I do get sad, and I wish I was there to protect her. But, you know, it's made her the person she is, and I feel that she's stronger because of it.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it has made her stronger, while teaching her that she can get what she wants if she's prepared to pay the price for doing so. Or she can get better at how she goes about getting what she wants and actually not cross the line into illegality next time. Morality? Well, that's optional and separate from the law, as poor Ryan's going to find out in due course.
I was still trying to keep up that self-preservation of I didn't have anything to do with this.
One of the things that was presented was this cell phone video that Gypsy had taken. And it shows her walking through her mother's bedroom. And she points at the mattress and then makes a stabbing motion with her hand. The video, at that point, that was a very hard pill to swallow.
You didn't know about it beforehand.
We did not.
Yeah, she tried to avoid responsibility, blame others, even though the extent of premeditation is unquestionable. It wasn't and never could be argued as spur of the moment. It was planned over an extended period of time. Not particularly well, but the intent was always clear. So good luck arguing that.
Immediately, my face just sunk, and I felt nothing but guilt for lying to them.
She turned around in absolute fear. Absolute fear.
No, your face dropped because you either forgot about that video or maybe thought you deleted it. I don't know. But either way, you knew it proved that you were involved beyond any doubt whatsoever. What you say are feelings of guilt are because you know what you did. It's not to be confused with remorse. You have none of that. You were caught and you're admitting that you were guilty. You know it. I know it. The whole world knows it. And you knew that you weren't going to get away with it. Your stepmother's right. It was fear that you were feeling. The fact that you were guilty was secondary to that.
Gypsy clearly had some involvement in the pre-planning of this. We had no other case to look at. We had no precedent for this. And we also weren't sure that there was even a defense that we could raise. If we went to trial and we lost, Gypsy would die in prison. She would spend the rest of her life behind bars.
If by some you mean almost entirely, then yes, she absolutely did, and there was no way to avoid that. But lawyers will lawyer, and they will try to find ways around things, and clearly this one did, because she would get the chance at freedom while Nicholas Godejohn will be trapped forever.
Mike said, we have a deal.
The prosecuting attorney not only agreed to reduce the charge from first-degree murder to second-degree murder, but he also agreed that the prison sentence that she would serve would be the absolute minimum that you can receive on the charge of second-degree murder.
And I said, what is it? What's the number? And he said, a 10. And I said, yes. Like I was accepting a marriage proposal. And I just hugged him right there.
10 years for premeditated murder on the condition of a guilty plea. In my opinion, the DA was simply looking at this tiny, frail-looking woman who would claim all manner of mitigating factors from medical ailments, forced procedures, and prolonged abuse from her mother, who was using her to make money, and he figured that there was a good chance the jury wouldn't convict with the prospect of such a heavy sentence that would follow it. So, for expediency, and probably to preserve his own record, because let's face it, no prosecutor likes to lose a case, a deal was offered, and sweetened by being an overly generous deal to almost guarantee that she would accept it. And it wouldn't stop him from going out and crucifying Nicholas Godejohn for his part.
Testifying at Nick's trial was the choice that I made. I took my opportunity to take the stand and take accountability. And I owned up to my part.
Who planned this murder?
I did.
Of course you did. It would serve well for your probation review when it came due a few years later. You were immune to further punishment or prosecution, and you could cement in the public eye and on the record that while you were involved, the real bad guy behind the whole story was him, and you were just a victim, even while admitting you were the brains behind the whole operation. And people bought it. Insane.
The one thing that stands out the most to me of that trial were the text messages and the exchanges between the two. And just how planned the entire event was. I recall seeing messages pop up and Gypsy on the stand and the prosecutor asking her what she meant by certain things. And she tried to deflect. But you can see step by step how it all unfolded. Their plans to try and be together and how Gypsy was going to rid herself of her mother. There was no disputing that.
The journalist gets it. Interesting, though, that she isn't saying, or rather, isn't shown saying anything more negative about Gypsy. Pretty clear that she doesn't believe her and thinks there's been a miscarriage of justice here, because Gypsy's complicity in the event was obvious, yet is apparently trying to downplay and deflect it to point most of the blame at Nick Godejohn.
I answered those questions to the best of my ability with all the honesty that I have within me. You know, I don't care what people think about me. I told my truth.
That 12 seconds tells me all I need to know about her. She told the truth to the best of her ability, which is obviously very limited, and also adds to that, I told my truth. Not my story, but my truth. There is no my truth or your truth. There's only the truth. When you have to caveat it with my truth, that's pretty much confirmation that you're lying, because you're trying to reassure everyone that you're telling the truth while also reassuring yourself that that's the case. Almost everybody would simply say my story, They wouldn't be trying to impress upon others that they're telling a truth which isn't the whole truth.
In early 2019, I received in the mail a letter from Nick. Basically, he was explaining to me that he is still in love with me, that he doesn't regret what he did, and so I began writing the letter back to him, and I said we're both paying consequences of our choices. And then I moved on to say, I don't want a relationship with you, and I'm happy.
Oof, basically the ultimate Dear John letter. You served your purpose, I don't need you anymore, and I don't have to deal with you either, because in a few years, I'm going to be out, I'm going to move on with my life without you, and you're going to stay in prison until you die. Thanks, but no thanks. Bitch.
How do you think Ryan feels about your relationship these days?
I think that Ryan has concerns that when I get out of prison, am I going to be loyal to him? Is my loyalty going to be on our marriage? And so I think that is a concern that anyone would have, considering the fact that I didn't date growing up and after being locked up for 8.5 years. If the thought pops in your head, am I really wanting to be married at this point in my life? And can I be the wife that he needs me to be?
The answer to all of that is no. I mean, I'd say he should run a mile, but we know he doesn't. And at that point in time, anyway, he'd have collapsed from a massive coronary if he tried. Though I understand that since he gained his freedom from the assassination queen, he has lost a load of weight and is living a much healthier lifestyle. So good for him.
I thought that you were done feeling this way.
What gave you that impression?
Because we're getting married in like 12 days. That's what gave me that impression.
I said, Gypsy, I'll support what you want to do, but please don't get married.
I said, can you please forgive me? And I was like, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this.
Oh, looking ahead to trouble in paradise before she even gets out of prison. Well, that bodes well, doesn't it? Yes, I know almost everyone watching this knows how the marriage to Ryan ends in disaster. Well, I mean, I don't, because I haven't seen exactly what happens. I just know that something happens and concludes with her knocked up by her ex. But that's something for the future, along with the FOIA reveals. And that brings us to the end of this penultimate episode reviewing the Gypsy Rose Prison Confessions. Murder complete, trial, plea deal complete, and now just the final countdown to release and nuptials. The exciting conclusion is only a couple of weeks away, after which there'll be a little break before moving up the next arc in the Gypsy Rose saga, but I'll explain more about that next time and the reasons why. Thank you very much for watching today. I hope if you haven't already that you will take a moment to subscribe to this channel and will favor this particular video with a like if you've enjoyed it. Please comment your thoughts below, because I'm always interested to get other opinions and insights, some of which I've no doubt will become invaluable as I move forward into the more present day part of Gypsy's shenanigans. And if you like a bit of alternative content, you can also find me streaming on YouTube at Hatman or Rumble at Hatz. Links up there. Please go and follow me there if you'd like. They're also in the description as well if you just want to click it and go. That's where you'll find me just about every Friday night, bringing comedy, irreverence, and opinions on whatever the world might present. But if I don't see you over there, then I hope I'll see you right back here next time. And until then, be good. Or not. Laters.